All right, welcome to part 2 of the Live Not by Lies BTS live stream. I'm here with Vinicius Barbosa, who is our incredible composer, and we actually wrote a couple songs together. We've been having a great time. Vinicius, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being here. So, I thought an interesting place to start would be for you to tell us how we initially became acquainted, because I think it's just a great story. And it might be
Yeah.
a great segue into how you feel about the project and why you decided that this is something you wanted to work on. Because um, I remember your sort of appeal when you reached out, not to spoil any of it, was very interesting, and it felt like this was really a project that we were meant to work on together.
Right. Right. Well, okay. Let's think about that. I, if I remember correctly, I just cold messaged you. We didn't know each other before this. We've never worked together before. Um, and when I at some point became aware that Live Not by Lies was going to be turned into a documentary, I must admit I wasn't that familiar with the book. I hadn't read it, but I was familiar with Rod. Um, then when I saw the project was up and was being made, I thought to myself, okay, I've got to reach out to these guys and um, and find out a little bit more about the project and I have to write music for this. Like this project was made for me. So I reached out to you, and one of the things that really um, one of the things that I would say really spoke to me about the project was as I mentioned in my email, I was born and raised in Brazil, right? So I was in Brazil until I was 18, and then I moved to the US. And in Brazil, Brazil is constantly flirting with different modalities of totalitarianism, um, and it's been so for a very long time. And I've experienced it myself, although I'm not going to claim to have been persecuted in any way, but I have seen sort of just just how quickly that kind of thing can creep into the society at large. So when I began to kind of understand a little bit more about the project, it really spoke to me because that was it's. I mean, it's a huge problem, and I can see it now. I could see it then, even before looking closely at the project, how some of those things were beginning to shape up in the U.S. Right, the country that I had been living in for a handful of years by that point. So so that was one of the main things that drew me. There's another thing that I can't remember if I mentioned this on the email or not, but I didn't become a Christian until sort of my mid or early to mid 20s. I had been brought up sort of as an atheist. I didn't really believe in God, um, and among many other things. But one of the one of the things that drew me to Christianity was the writings of some of these Christian dissidents. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, in particular, was somebody that I really was very very attracted to early on. Even when I was an atheist, I started reading him, and sort of his injunction to live not by lies, right, which is where it originally comes from. So that was kind of very attractive to me, and I felt like it'd be really neat if I could express those things that really affected me, influenced me, changed me. If I could express them musically, I thought that'd be pretty neat. So, am I remembering that correctly? I think that's how this
That's how
came.
I remember it. Yeah, I just thought it was fun. It's not. I don't have a policy against working with people that just email me out of the blue, but it just almost never works out. And yeah, there was this passion, I think, in your initial appeal. If I remember correctly, I said, I have no idea what I'm doing about a composer. We're really early stages. I don't even know how what the budget is or anything.
Right.
Email me in like 6 months, and then you did, and
A
we had
reminder.
I
I'm like, okay,
yeah,
he opened the door. I'm going to do it.
yeah. And that was great. And then we had our initial call and just had a great time hanging out. And obviously we've become good buddies since then. But
Right.
uh, yeah, just had a great time. And yeah, I felt that connection to what you were saying. And it's funny because it was kind of coming on the heels of there's been all this sort of meta layer to this project where um, at various times it's been very difficult to find collaborators who are not deeply offended by what we're doing. And I was thinking, oh man, like I love all my composer buddies, but I can't think of a single one who's going to want to do this project. So I was kind of at a point where I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. And then I remember you emailed me and I was like, oh yeah, that guy. He clearly does not think I'm insane.
Right.
And but no, that it became much more than that, where like not only were you not offended by it, but I think we were able to really connect on a deep level about um to your point, the danger of totalitarianism, and then maybe even more importantly, this, we talked about Dostoevsky quite a bit as well, and like this,
Mm-hmm.
him and other people who really point to this deeper path, like this
Mm-hmm.
this deeper, more spiritual um, path that I think we see lived out in the examples of these dissidents.
Yeah.
That's something that I know you and I are both in our own ways seeking and trying to figure out what that looks like, both as artists, as as men, as people living in America.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool to be able to collaborate on that, because I think that my feeling is that that contributed massively to the sort of beauty and the pathos of the music that you were able to write, because it
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
just and I do want to talk some about process, because I think people are interested in that. And I think we had a really productive series of conversations about our ethos that we were kind of going after in terms
Uh-huh.
of how we wanted to tell the story. I'd like to, again, sort of put you on the spot a little bit and hear your
Yeah.
perspective on what that was. But anyway, to wrap that first part up, yeah, it was, and for any of you, if you're out there and you're an aspiring composer or filmmaker, don't be afraid to send that email,
Yeah. It's funny
and
because
then
it
do
never
follow up.
do follow up, and it's funny because it almost never works. The cold emailing sort of thing. It's like 1 in 100 type thing. Um, but it just speaks to, I think, if I may get a little woo, but how I think that the team that sort of gathered around this project was drawn by God, and um, it became kind of clear to me as we all started working together. I was like, oh, this is a good team, So, for what it's
I
worth.
agree. No, I totally agree. Um, and I wouldn't have, I can't imagine anyone else having done it. I don't think it would be the same piece at all. So I'm excited. And I mean, as a segue into kind of our process and how we evolved the sound, and maybe
Right.
that could be a good chance for you to play a sample and
Sure.
talk about how you came to that sort of sonic landscape, as well as what went into the writing process, which was also kind of its own evolutionary process. We started
Right.
with a couple of ideas, and then but it's a series, so we were telling this story over a long period of time, and some of the music was finished in the first part before you even started on the final stuff, which I think
Right.
is really
Right.
fun. Anyway, we can get into all that, but I think um, it was always more than just, we need to slap some music on this thing. And
Right.
this was obviously, for me, it started as, it was always more than just making this political documentary. It was much deeper than that.
Mhm.
And so I think that was a big part of why it really connected on such a deep level for a lot of people, is that at every level, to your point, there were people on the team who cared about the
Right.
story that we were
Right.
telling, and felt connected to it in a personal way.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt the
So
same way.
tell me about your process. Yeah, you could start with music or you could start with talking about it. It's up to you. But tell me, in your sort of, again, your perspective, what do you remember about where we started,
Yeah.
and how we kind of got started?
So, well, what I do remember is you seem to have some idea already. And again, for those of you who are interested in composing, or either in pursuing that path, or just interested because of being curious, usually when a composer is approaching something, the director has sort of an idea of what we'll end up doing, um, however vague it might be. And you had somewhat of an idea. You had some music that you had already put into the documentary temporarily, just to kind of feel it out and see if it would work. Um, and I always like, and I was pleased that you like to do the same thing. I always like to kind of go deeper than just, oh, is this going to sound nice, against the picture. I want it to be the way I like to approach scoring is that I want it to be as deeply connected to the story as possible. Like it's part of the DNA, you know. So it's almost like, hopefully by the time we're done writing this, you know, creating this music, the score for this documentary wouldn't have worked anywhere else, right? It's just made for this, and it's so intricately tied to the story and to everything, the kind of the patterns and everything that's happening in the show, that it's just inseparable. And in order to do that, we had to dive into the story a little bit, and I think I had to figure out the sound in two. There were two big questions that I had to answer. One of them was stylistic, so that means what what kind of music are we going to be listening to in this? You know, because it's a story that it's actually a collage of stories, right? That largely take place the in in the Eastern European world where the former Soviet Union was, and then there are some, you know, sometimes it sort of bounces and there are parallels in the West, and it talks a little bit about that. So I thought to myself, okay, stylistically, I suppose it would be interesting if we could make things sound a little bit like the music is coming from that world, right? That was one of the things. So I was drawn to, you know, musically, I was drawn to things like, you know, some of the Russian composers, some of the Eastern European composers, and that music is very sort of rich and stylistically robust. So I was like, I was drawing from that a lot. That
You
was
know,
the
I'm remembering one quick note that I'm remembering too. You sent me a Tchaikovsky's Cherubic Hymn, which is part of
yes,
the Eastern Orthodox liturgy. And I'm Eastern Orthodox, and I when you sent that to me, I was like, all right, we're on the same page here, because it was so it's just gorgeous, but also that was such a great kind of creative moment of connection where I was like,
yeah,
okay, I think we want the same thing here. You know, it,
right,
it was very specific.
right. That's right. Um, and so part of what you're saying there, it was to answer the question of what kind of music should we be hearing, right? So that was the first thing. Now, one thing that was deeper than that was now, I like to even try to tie in the notes that I pick musically with kind of the larger picture of our story. So you and I came up with this idea, right? Where, you know, a large part of the name of the documentary involves living not by lies and telling the truth. And so, um, in some ways, one of the ways to look at these stories is a wrestle between truth and falsehood, right? And so we sort of thought to ourselves, what if we kind of expanded that musically, right? What if we could make sort of a musical representation um, of truth and a musical representation of lies, right? And I guess this would be an interesting place here to bring in some some music for folks to listen to. But the basic framework that we came up with was we should have one musical theme that represents truth and one musical theme that represents lies, um, and we'll kind of have them play things out as the different stories progress, right? So why don't I share my screen here? Let me see if I can do that well. There we go. Um, and I'll just share with everybody our just a snippet of our lies theme. Very simple in the piano, and I just want everybody to kind of listen to what that sounds like. So here it goes. So you kind of get the
I
idea.
always loved that one.
Thank you. One of the features of that, you know, I like to think conceptually. You do too. But one of the features of this theme is, you know, if you really think about lies, and all of us have told lies in our lives, and um, the thing about them is that they're kind of alluring. You know, they sort of lure you into telling them because it, and this is exemplified in the documentary, because it will be convenient, or it will kind of, you know, make the path easier, quote unquote, for you, or something like that. And so I wanted this music, to be a little bit like that. You know, it's kind of alluring. It's sort of almost like a song of a siren. You know, that's calling you in, drawing you into its claws, right? And it's almost inescapable. So that was
Yeah.
sort of my initial conceptualization of this.
Yeah, I always loved that one. It's interesting too how that might relate kind of to the broader one of the broader things that we talked about right at the beginning, which was we, you know, we want to take people on a journey and we want to be patient, you know, like it
Mm-hmm.
we we decided early on like we don't want to try to go for the big hit every time we have it. Like
Right,
we're gonna fight this kind of more patient emotional war over the course of the
right,
whole thing.
right.
And that was such a big I remember that was such a big breakthrough when you sort of started us down the path of saying like what if lies is actually what if the drama of the lies theme is actually much more subverted to the alluringness of it,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of inverse that on the other side where the cost of truth is very dramatic and
Yeah.
not as soft. And that was such an interesting concept that I think opened up so much of what's cool about the sonic landscape of the series,
Mm,
because it would have been so easy and obvious to say bad guy on screen, cue the drama, you know, and
right.
that I just think it's so fun to do it this way, because yeah, that is the issue, that is the whole problem, especially of what Live Not By. It's kind of the core thesis is
Right.
comfort is the new gulag.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
the villain is not an obvious bad guy, which of course was never really the case. I mean, there were a lot of big, very alluring promises made by all the various totalitarian leaders of the 20th century. You know, they didn't gain all these followers because they said, I'm going to make your lives miserable.
No, no, quite the
They
opposite.
made lots of big promises, you know, and yeah. Anyway, so I think that was always such a cool feature for me. But it plays in later. I'm sure we'll get to some of it, but the way we dealt with some of kind of the heavier, more dramatic, emotional
Mm,
sequences as well, which
yeah.
I really enjoyed
Yeah.
pacing our way through
We can
those.
get to that later on.
Okay, great.
But yeah, and so that was really the um, heart of that theme, I suppose. It was that the alluring nature of lies, not only the lies that other people tell you, but the lies that you choose to accept and that you tell yourself, right? Which is kind of that's sort of where this stuff starts, right? Is when you begin to conveniently just give territory to the enemy by doing that, by lying. Um, let's see. I could share the theme for truth next if we want to now pivot a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's have that contrast. It'd be nice.
Cool. So like you were saying earlier, the lies theme had this kind of alluring nature. You know, it was almost like more sonically beautiful in a sense than the theme for truth. And and now we were left with the challenge. Okay, what does this sound like to tell the truth, right? And you know, a kind of a more obvious approach would have been, oh, it should be beautiful and heroic and big and so on and triumphant. Um, but as we see very time and again in the documentary, that's not how it worked out in the experiences of those dissidents, right? Who decided not to bend the knee. And it was kind of, you know, it was way grittier than that.
Mm-hmm.
It was more like a street fight, you know, scrappier. And so that's kind of what we landed on. We landed on this little motif um, that's played by uh, an Eastern European version of the dulcimer, um, which was our attempt to kind of keep the sonic palette somewhat in the vicinity of Eastern Europe. Um, and let me pull that up so you can all hear what that sounds like. I'm going to share my screen one more time. Here we go. So this is the theme for truth.
before we play it, I'll also interject. This is one of my favorite features of Vinicius's workflow is that he never just sends me music. He says, "Let's set a meeting, and I'm gonna play you some music." Like, and it's this very interactive experience. It's great. It's I don't know who put that idea in your head, Vinicius, but it's great because especially when you're working remotely. Because I know a lot of times I just have to send people a draft of something, and
Right.
you don't get to experience it together, and you don't get to talk about it in real time. So
Yeah.
this is kind of exactly what Vinicius and I did back and forth for
That's really
months.
it. Yeah.
Is this? He pulls it up. We're on a Zoom. We listen to it, and then we talk about what we're thinking.
Talk
So
about it. I guess to get a little bit into the process, I'm going on a lot of tangents, but this may be interesting to folks. Um, the way it used to work in back in the day in the worlds of film was that the director would come to the composer's house or studio and listen to the stuff in person. I have a couch here in my studio for that purpose, but it doesn't really happen anymore. It's all really happens sort of remotely now. And at first glance, you may think, oh, it's just a quirky little thing. How else are they going to play music for each other, right? It has to be in person. And now that we do it remotely, you can just send things and wait for the other person to listen and so on. But I don't think that's true. I think there's something deeper about just the kind of the collaboration of two human beings of where you're interacting with each other, you're seeing how the other person reacts, and I think you kind of want to experience that together. It's sort of it just kind of raises the level of seriousness a little bit when you're live with somebody and you're in the room, so to speak, listening together, right? And I sort of see the creative collaboration that way. I think it's the way to, like, this is what's different than if you were just kind of downloading some music or having the computer do it for you. It's, well, there's a human being behind the music, and I want to see how we sort of resonate off of each other. Does that make sense? So that's kind of where I come from with that. All
I
right,
love it.
so let me show you all the truth theme here.
Nice. Always loved that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great too because if someone was kind of going through all the versions, if anybody wants to go back and watch them, it's cool because there's these different versions and variations of all of these, and so kind of again back to for the process nerds out there, where we started was with these very basic sketches that you sent me, and we were kind of like, yeah, this is right for here, this is right for here, and then I'd play with them within the context of the edit and
Hmm.
reuse the same thing over and over and over again
Right.
to sort of feel it out. And then what you did is you came in and said, I was just thinking about with that one, here's two different ways we can end that. We
Right.
can go kind of up or we can go down depending on what's
Right.
happening. We can extend kind of the mystery of it. We can make it a little bit more definitive. It becomes this very collaborative back and forth where you're trying to solve very specific kind of dramatic and story issues
Right.
with music, because as you pointed out to me when we were just getting to know each other, it's not really an overestimate to say that a huge percentage, definitely a majority of the deeper emotional experience that people have with cinematic works, that a big, big, big part of that has to do with the sonic landscape, because, and I feel that especially as a filmmaker, I get so, I was thinking about that recently, music is so powerful. And I think especially for me as a filmmaker, because I associate cinema with work for better or worse, that sometimes music is the first thing that moves me, you know, and I
Mhm.
have a harder time sometimes putting aside the work part with movies, even in some
Right.
cases. But when I listen to a really great piece of music, it kind of cuts right through that intellectual part
Yeah.
uh, of my brain and goes right to my heart a little bit.
Right. I'm biased, but I agree, and I think that's the power of music is that one of the things it does is it bypasses all of the noise in your head. Right. It just goes right through it, and it goes straight to the heart.
Yeah, sometimes it just totally surprises you.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so as you can see, that was a much more dramatic, darker even vibe.
Hmm.
Even though, but we call that the truth theme, you know.
Right. There's almost a
And
tragedy to
again,
it. Right.
exactly, because you know, yeah, at the end of the day, we wanted to put people in the shoes of the people who are making these decisions because it was not obvious to them at the time that what they were doing was going to produce any real, at least earthly fruit.
Right.
I think most of them were operating on the idea that, excuse me, that there's more to life than what we can see right here and now.
Hmm.
But it was really scary, you know. It was very much a real risk for them to stand up for truth, and so yeah, we wanted to give people that experience of feeling kind of the drama of like, am I going to put, you know, my family at risk in order to do the right thing,
Right.
and am I going to, you know, put my career at risk and all these things, and the answer for these people was yes, but
Hmm.
it was very difficult. So
And as just an aside from that, one of the things that their stories did to me was, it kind of just revealed my wimpiness, as a like these people are so courageous, in a level that I want to understand and embody it in my life, but I know that I am way 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 behind of where they were at in that sense, and it's something that I hope that I can mimic in my own life. Yeah.
totally. I had that experience a lot when I was, you know, I'd be editing, just sitting there thinking about how I'm tired and I want to stop editing. and uh and
Sitting
then I'm like,
there and
yeah, and I'm sitting there having these self-pitying thoughts while I'm editing a sequence about someone who went to prison because they refused to, you know, uh, toe the party line on some absurd
right.
issue, and that was really convicting. I'll just leave it at that. It was very convicting many times. It really healed me
Yeah.
in those moments to just be like, this is okay. I just have to accept that this is the way it is, you know,
Mhm.
and it's okay that it's hard, and it's also okay and it's good that I don't, you know, that I'm not facing prison time for making this documentary. You know, I
Right.
mean, it's been a challenge, um, and like I said, it's been a challenge in some ways that are directly related to kind of the theme of the documentary, but it's not been a challenge to that degree.
Right.
I've had no career consequences really as a result of working on it and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I know. Now it's all out on the record, so we'll
Right.
see what happens. Uh, but no, that's great. Okay, well, we don't have tons of time, so I think let's because we're just kind of ripping through,
Mhm.
having fun. But let's do one or two more samples if you want, and we can
Sure.
kind of go out with some more music.
Yeah. I think the story I really want to make sure I tell is what happened whenever I would write music for surrounding the story of Camilla. Um, so I'm assuming that everybody here has watched the documentary and they know her story, and I think I even heard
But
Rod
for
say,
those who don't, I will provide just a quick. Camilla is the Czech woman, Camilla
right,
Benda, who or Bendova. They have a weird naming convention for Czech people.
right, the
Their
men and
last names are different. Yeah, the men have a different naming convention for their last name than the women, even though they
that's right,
technically share a name. Anyway, um, Camilla is the Czech woman who kind of features in all the episodes, who has 6 kids, lives in Prague, was part of kind of right at the center. She's a mathematician, right at the center of this important political resistance movement that took place in Prague. Devout Catholic. Her husband goes to prison for 4 years, writes home, says, "Hey, we can go to Austria if we keep our mouth shut about what's going on in the Soviet Union. And she says, you got to stay in prison. Sorry, buddy. Which is just so hardcore. And I
More
can't
than
even
that, she
imagine.
says when the ship starts sinking, the first ones to leave are the rats. That's what she says.
That's
Which is
true.
like,
She's a pretty spicy lady.
yeah,
Really, really cool woman. But anyway, I think we both, everybody feels a connection to Camilla. But it was cool because, yeah, you really dialed in on her, and I think had a
yeah.
really powerful creative experience getting to write music
Right,
around her.
right. So let me share a little bit about that, because that was interesting. So obviously, I resonated deeply, deeply with her character, and I was very moved. I was just very moved by her courage, um, and by just her zeal for her family, for truth, for her faith, and you know this was strange. I had my experience writing that music was this. I don't know if I've told you this or if I told uh, anybody on the team, but whenever I would write music for Camilla, it just it just came out. It flowed out very, very easily. Usually, as a composer, I have to usually squeeze the music out of my brain. It's not that easy. But whenever it came to writing music for Camilla, it sort of just flowed out very, very easily. And the sort of the apex of that experience was when I wrote the song that goes at the end of episode 4. Right, episode 4 has, it culminates in this very deep emotional and spiritual kind of you know peak, and I wrote, and at the end credits a song plays that is sort of the song for Camilla, right? And it was the funniest way of kind of getting to write that song, because at some point it became clear that there was going to need to be a song, that we would need a song for the end credits. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not a songwriter, I'm a composer, so I'll just I'll find somebody to collaborate with. You had been doing some songwriting already for the show, and I was like, well, we'll get somebody to do this. Um, and and over and over, just all of the options kind of started falling through, right? And it became clear to me God was kind of like nudging me and saying, well, I think you're supposed to give this a try. And I sat down to write that song, and the entire song downloaded into my brain immediately, and it came out in one sitting, which
That's
was
the
wild.
best. Before
Um,
we play it, I also, back to kind of, I think it's interesting context. The first 3 episodes have one closing credit song,
right,
and it's called Dust in Our Eyes. And the whole idea is, with that song, again, it's almost like a lullaby. Like, it's got a little bit of a Radiohead influence going on, but like it's this very, um, it's got a hard edge to it on one level, but it's almost like it's almost like this hard edge packaged with like clouds or something. Like there's
right,
this very, because the whole idea was that we want to kind of lure people in, um and that was really, we needed that, because all of the first 3 episodes end on a very specific kind of, I don't want to say a cliffhanger. There's a little bit of cliffhangers in a sense, but a thematic uh, stopping point that's dramatic, right?
right.
It's not, there's no conclusion. This needed something completely unique from all of that, which is
Yeah,
again why I think, yeah, God was kind of like, no, you're not going to go spend a bunch of money licensing some expensive song that you're going to use 4 times. You need 2 different songs, and
right.
and both of them are going to be custom for this thing, because there's very
That's
specific
right.
needs. And so yeah, you wrote an amazing, really cool melody or song for that, and then I kind of came in with this like weird attempt at with some lyrics and some singing, and then you ended up actually
Right,
performing
right.
the vocals, which was really cool. So
We could
that's
just
the
do that.
first
I have
three.
it. I have it here if we want to listen
Let's
to that.
play it real quick. Yeah, let's do that one, and then we'll come to the Camilla one. Yeah,
Yeah, so let's start
I
with
think
that.
it'll be cool to see them back to back. I think
Right.
it's going to be
Because
interesting to
in a way,
contrast.
these two songs are the embodiments of truth and lies, right? The first song that plays in the first 3 episodes in the credits is kind of like the embodiment of the lies, right? I like to say it's like Big Brother is singing to you, um, and then the next song at the
That's
end of the first,
exactly what it is.
right, the next song is the song that's the truth one. Okay, so let's first listen to the song that plays at the end of the first 3 episodes, which I wrote the music part, and then I kept trying to sing in it, and it wasn't working. And then I was like, Isaiah, you need to help me out here. And then you sang something on it, and you wrote some lyrics, and I was like, this is it. This is the key to unlocking the song. So I just re-recorded the vocals, but you created the melody and the lyrics, and sort of the musical bed was by me. So this was a cool.
And I just have to say, just to Vinicius's credit, I'm not a good singer, but I do sing. Like I sing in my choir at church. Like I sing. This is a very hard song to sing. I tried my best, and I just couldn't pull it off. It takes a lot of vocal control to pull this off. Vinicius did a wonderful job. Anyway.
Thank you. And this is the expanded version. I'm about to play here the expanded version, which is longer than the version we hear in the credits. So
sweet.
I'm going to hit play on that.
Awesome.
Nothing to hold you down now. All you must do is trust me. Nothing you feel is real. Just in my in our eyes, just in my eyes, in our
So you get the picture, right?
I love that song.
I do too. It's really fun.
I love all these songs. I love all these songs. We've got to get this soundtrack published because I love it.
Working on getting that released, so that would be fun.
No, it will happen soon. That is such a fun song, and I really love that chorus. But yeah, it is. It really. I love that idea. Like it's Big Brother singing to you. You know, it's
right. And that's. I mean, when I saw your lyrics that you wrote, I was like, this is the kind of the concept behind the song, right? Because again, because these lies that come from above, right, are alluring, and that's kind of what we were trying to embody in this song is the lies that come from above that you might be tempted to accept.
Yep.
And I suppose last but not least, we should play the song from episode 4, right?
Let's do it.
So again, just to reiterate, this is now the sort of the polar opposite of the song you just heard, and this is the song that embodies truth, right? And really, it is the song that that pays homage to Camilla and to her family and to everybody who suffered terribly under the communist regime for telling the truth. And just one more little caveat to add here, which is at some point in episode 4, Camilla says that she had conversations with her husband when he came out of prison, echoing one of the lines from Lord of the Rings where the hobbits turn to each other and say, I wonder if anyone's ever going to sing songs about us. And so she would say that to her husband. And in a way,
and if you know the context of that moment in the book, it's even they're just convinced they're going to die at that point.
Right.
Like there's no way out. There's nothing, you know. And I think that Camilla and Václav felt that way a lot of times. Like we're going to die anonymously, and no one's going to ever care that we tried. But maybe there's this hope. Anyway, I just wanted to interject that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's exactly right. Maybe there's this hope that someone will at some point sing a song about us. And again, the documentary as a whole is a song for them, quote unquote. But then I wanted also there to be a literal song for them. and this is that song. She doesn't know this yet, so she needs to know this. We'll make sure to make her aware of it when we release this. But in any case,
I need to email you guys together right after this is over.
yeah, we'll get it. We'll make it happen. But in any case, this is the song for Camilla.
Sing again. Time will turn our crying out. Ever gleaming light to waste the blood-stained light. Spring again, life flows on to silver light, tossing, turning, now rise the way out. How shall we sing this our song?
Love that one too.
Thank you.
Great stuff.
So there we have it.
Well, I think that's a perfect stopping point. As usual, when Vinny and I get talking, we were aiming for half an hour, and it's now been a lot longer than that. But I've been completely engrossed in this, and I feel like hopefully everyone watching is not minding all of the extra time, because we got to listen to some great music, and this is great. Vinny, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thanks for doing this project, my dude. I I'm going to just say this on the record. Vinny and I will be working together again, because it's rare that you find collaborators that you just connect with so deeply. And
it's kind of
I've
crazy.
had lots and lots of great partners, but there's another level that can be reached, and I think that was reached in this case. So I want to say very publicly, thank you for everything you put into this project. So
thank you for saying that. I appreciate it, and it's blessed me tremendously. So it's just a privilege.
Well, and I want to say thank you to, everyone who supported this project, who made it possible for Vinny and I to get together and make this and spend so much time working on it. This is for you guys specifically. So thank you for making that possible. I hope you enjoyed this kind of peek behind the curtain. And please keep an eye on the project. Keep telling your friends about it. Keep promoting it. It's important. It's as important as it's ever been. That's one thing that came up a lot in some of the Q&As. What do you think now that there's kind of been this regime change? And I can't stress enough that this is not primarily a political issue. It is a truth and lies issue. It's a spiritual issue. It is the threat of totalitarianism, and the threat of our abandonment of truth in the name of comfort is as relevant now as it has ever been. Mm-hmm. And it's really, really important that we continue to fight that battle. And again, not against each other, but against, as the ending of the show says, against our passions, against our pride, that's where the real battle is taking place, is inside all of us. So, and that's what's so great about music. I mean, that's another thing. It cuts right to the heart, and it brings people together, and it's this unifying thing. I said we were going to wrap up, but no, I've been listening to this, like, this is hilarious, but I've been on this like kind of Gen Z chick pop kick lately with like Olivia Rodrigo and a couple other people. And it's been so great because I'm just like, I just have been feeling this connected kind of, there's so much in it that I'm just like, this is so ridiculous. This is completely absurd. But there's something about music that just connects me to my fellow human beings.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if they're 20 years young, not 20, 12 years younger than me and coming from a completely different philosophical, spiritual perspective. There's something about great music that just brings us together, reminds us that we're all in this together. And it's just beautiful. So I thank you for bringing your skills to bear on that.
Of course. Somebody said music is one of the last things that you can't be cynical about, right? And I think it applies here.
That's great. I want to get that on a t-shirt.
All right, now we should probably wrap up.
We should wrap up. Well, hey, Vinny, thanks so much again, and we'll be in touch. Guys, keep an eye out for the next thing that we do together. It will be coming one day when we can get our ducks in a row. So
that's right.
It'd be great. Awesome. All right, thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Political scientists sometimes call this a spiral of silence, and that's where you've got a very contentious issue with a highly vocal minority staking out one particular position and demonstrating the will and the capacity to make life very, very difficult for any dissenter. That creates a spiral of silence where you'll get more and more people recognizing that there is a social cost or some cost to expressing dissent, and so they will fall silent. That silence is then interpreted as tacit consent to the extreme and very vocal minority. So that creates the illusion of consensus. And the more that grows, the more the deterrence effect grows, and so you get a spiral, an even bigger, a faster spiral effect, until all you're left with is a minority at the other end of the spectrum who are very smart and have very high levels of intellectual integrity and are willing to pay the price, are willing to suffer the social consequences or the financial consequences or the professional consequences of holding to the belief or dissent from the now established orthodoxy that until 5 minutes ago, before the spiral began, was a completely common sense point of view.
Now streaming exclusively on Angel.